For 6 months, I added extra work hours and skipped lunch breaks to save up. Everything was for one purpose as our 10th anniversary neared, 3 weeks away. I had found a ring, not just any ring, but a cushion-cut diamond of nearly 2 carats, set in platinum. As the jeweler displayed it under a spotlight, I thought she would cry when she saw it. And she did, the kind of tears you never forget. I arrived home early that Tuesday and heard the shower running from the hallway. Her phone was on the kitchen island next to her keys. I put down my bag, then the screen lit up with a notification from an unfamiliar name and the message. "Is everything still on? Does he know anything?" I stood there as the water kept running. Then more messages came in. I didn't touch the phone but read the screen instead. In just 5 minutes it all became clear. Over a decade morphed into an unfamiliar shape. I grasped the ring box in my coat pocket. She hadn't always been this way, or so it seemed. Perhaps she was, and I simply failed to perceive it. It is that aspect that stings, not the infidelity itself, but the rewinding. Every dinner where she appeared preoccupied. Each weekend away with her friend Dana. Every time she chuckled at her phone and subtly turned the screen away. I managed construction projects. I oversaw schools, community centers, a veterans clinic we completed 2 years ago that still fills me with pride. My grandfather constructed homes using his hands in rural Kentucky. I never wielded a hammer for a living, but I grasped the significance of constructing something that would outlive you. That's why I remained in my profession, even when the remuneration would never grace any highlight reel. You either build something tangible or nothing at all. We led a good life. A house in a respectable suburb outside Columbus was ours. Caleb, our 7-year-old son, possesses a unique blend of seriousness and humor. He asks thought-provoking questions that often require contemplation before answering. We got Hector, a beagle mix, the year we moved in. He would sleep at the foot of our bed each night. I believed our relationship was stable, though not flawless. No marriage ever is. I assumed the ring would serve as a symbol of renewal after our difficult year. I thought 10 years signified a commitment to one another once more. Faucet was still running when I placed the ring box atop her phone. There were indications. I recognized them now. 3 months prior, she began attending the gym on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Initially, I paid little attention. She spoke of resuming a routine, but subsequently started purchasing new clothes, not gym attire, but more upscale items that she wore during those evenings and returned home, freshly showered with damp hair. I raised the issue once, commenting on how she looked stylish for the gym. She dismissed it with a laugh, mentioning the new instructor enforced a strict dress code, a feature of some luxury fitness studios. I chose to overlook it to avoid being perceived as overly watchful, akin to an inquisitive spouse. The painful memories of my parents' crumbling marriage at age 12 still lingered, and I swore never to emulate that behavior. The memory that kept resurfacing later was the woman she once was. Years ago, she drove 40 minutes to a construction site where we were completing a community center in Westerville. In her hard hat and holding coffee, she stood beside me in the mud as I showed her the building's future layout. Her grip tightened on my arm when I explained the gymnasium. "I love that you construct things people truly need," she said. That was her. That was the woman I wed approximately 6 weeks before that Tuesday. I found a restaurant receipt in the trash, an unfamiliar location for a midweek dinner for 2. In this rephrased version, I have preserved the original meaning and maintained the approximate length of the text. I was informed she was having lunch with a coworker, yet kept the receipt for some time before returning it. I reasoned there must be an explanation. However, that receipt is what preoccupies my thoughts now, as it's the moment I could have altered events that followed. I attempted to bridge the gap between us. I rationalized this by telling myself it was a move to bring us closer. I began arriving home earlier whenever possible. I proposed we cook dinner together on Sundays, a tradition from when we first moved in. She agreed, but she was often partially engaged elsewhere, glancing at her phone, refilling her water, or standing with her back to me at the counter. One evening, Caleb requested her assistance for a school project, needing someone to interview about their job. He had his notebook and pen ready at the kitchen table. She suggested I be interviewed instead, claiming she had a call in 20 minutes. Seeing this, Caleb looked down at his notebook and then turned to me. I settled down and responded to all his queries. He scribbled deliberate words indicating it held significance to him. She retired to another room for her phone call. Caleb never mentioned it again, yet I didn't forget the incident. My attention shifted towards her routine in ways it hadn't before. Tuesday and Thursday nights, prolonged lunches, late nights with her phone screen dimmed. Hector would glance at me from the foot of the bed in the darkness, as if waiting for a response. A week prior to our anniversary, I collected the ring from the jeweler on Monday. I kept it in my car before heading home. Contemplating a decade together, I pondered if she had reciprocated my choice. I returned home and stored the box in my jacket pocket, waiting for the opportune moment. 2 days prior to that Tuesday, I received a call from my sibling. In Columbus for work, he craved lunch. We convened at a downtown diner. In a secluded booth, we munched on disappointing omelets where he inquired about my status. I responded with fine. He scrutinized me for a moment, then admitted I didn't appear fine. I divulged our tumultuous year, mentioned her apparent distance, and hoped the anniversary would revive things. He offered few words. He merely stirred his coffee before inquiring subtly if I was positive that was the only issue. I asserted yes twice. He nodded and steered the conversation elsewhere. However, that question lingered. On my return journey, I pondered it repeatedly if I was certain. I parked at home, sat in the car for a while. The house lights glowed. Her vehicle stood nearby. Upon entering, she was on the couch, engrossed in her phone, the familiar posture of hers, screen obscured from me. She lifted her gaze and smiled, her usual cheerful, long-married smile. We prepared dinner, dined, and carried on. Caleb discussed a classmate who constructed a birdhouse at school and displayed it during show and tell, sparking Caleb's desire to build one as well. I suggested we could do that on Saturday. He nodded gravely, indicating a significant decision had been made. She ate in silence. While Caleb spoke, I scrutinized her expression, attempting to perceive her true feelings. That night, I stayed awake for hours. I convinced myself I was mistaken. By morning, I almost believed it. The next day, she emerged from the bathroom wrapped in a towel, her hair wet, and froze in the kitchen doorway. The ring lay atop her phone, its box open, and the diamonds sparkling with an air of conviction. She glanced at the ring, then at me, then back at the ring. Her countenance contorted into an expression I'd never seen before, one that started as relief but quickly morphed into fear within 2 seconds. "Did you read the message?" she whispered. "I saw the diamond," I replied. I believed it would symbolize the woman I married, but I was mistaken. I picked up my keys. Pause. Her voice broke, imploring me to return the ring. "Take it back, please." I halted at the door without glancing back. "Keep it," I muttered. "You'll have to deal with a lot of things on your own now." The door shut behind me, leaving her standing there in just a towel, clutching both the phone and the ring I'd purchased after 6 months for a woman who no longer existed. Caleb was at his grandmother's place. The house fell silent. I climbed into the car and drove aimlessly for about 40 minutes, ultimately ending up in a Home Depot parking lot on Columbus East Side with the engine running and headlights aglow. I phoned my brother, who answered promptly. I shared with him what I had discovered. He didn't gloat with "I told you so." Instead, he simply instructed, "Come here." He was lodging at a Marriott off the freeway. I arrived around 9. We remained in his room with the TV muted as he allowed me to speak. I recounted everything: the gym meetings, the bill, the phone message. Screen displaying a ring. Her face changes upon recognition. He queries me with one question: what was my intended action? I confessed ignorance, yet was certain of what I wouldn't do: return home that night or contact her. 7 times she phoned while I resided in the hotel room. I observed the phone illuminate and dim. After the 7th call, she sent a message. I ignored it, unwilling to listen to whatever she wanted to convey at that moment. My brother inquired about Caleb. I responded that he was with his mother in Cincinnati. They had planned this 2-month-old trip during fall break, 5 days long. He was expected back on Saturday. The timing seemed the only aspect that had been successful. He didn't need to be present for any of this. My brother extended the second bed to me. I accepted it. I spent some time gazing at the ceiling before drifting off to sleep. Upon waking, it was 4 in the morning, and I knew decisively what my next move would be. I wasn't pleased with the decision, but I was certain. Next morning, I contacted a family law attorney named Patricia Hale, who operated from an office in Worthington. My attire was still from the previous day as I sat before her desk at 9. She was straightforward, posing questions and outlining the proceedings if I opted to proceed. Discussions included the house, shared assets, timeframes. She even used dissolution. Ohio offered a no-fault option, meaning I didn't have to prove anything. I merely had to wish for separation. The term dissolution resonated for a brief moment, symbolizing something that dissolves in water effortlessly. No paperwork was filed that day. This was a conscious decision, not indecision. I departed with an informational folder and her business card, choosing to delay filing anything. I, having a 7-year-old son, should not have disintegrated our family within 48 hours without exhausting all other options. I returned home. She wasn't there. I ascended to the upper floor and collected 3 days' worth of clothes, my laptop, passport, and a photograph from our 2nd anniversary that adorned the dresser. I recognized why I picked it up. It was the last instance of certainty about her, us, and the future we were shaping. The ring rested on the kitchen island. She had shifted it from the phone at some point. I stood and contemplated it, then extinguished the kitchen light and secured the front door. In the afternoon, I rented a one-bedroom apartment in Grandview, a peaceful street. I paid for an entire month. The initial fortnight remained tranquil, though it felt unsettlingly so. I commuted to work, managed job sites, addressed emails. I informed only my brother and work superior about this matter, keeping secrets from others. No public posts were made. I also didn't discuss it with mutual friends. I vanished from the life I had known before that particular Tuesday. Caleb returned from his grandmother's on a Saturday. I picked him up. He inquired as to why we weren't going home. I explained that my mother and I were sorting things out, and I was temporarily staying somewhere else. He stared out the window for quite some time before asking, "Is it my fault?" I pulled over, turned towards him, and assured him firmly, without any hint of softness, "No, not a single part of this is your responsibility." He nodded. His disbelief lingered, which stuck with me longer than anything else. She left messages, some desperate, some furious, one incredibly calm, a tone that was somehow the most distressing. She claimed things were complex. She used the word complex as if it was an adequate explanation. Through my lawyer, she discovered that I had initiated the legal documents. This was when she hired her own attorney. During the disclosure phase, her team was obligated to reveal financial records and communications pertinent to the case. This is how the details emerged. The man's identity, a regional sales manager at a firm we collaborated with on a vendor agreement, and the time frame, approximately 8 months. For 8 months, I reviewed documents at a conference table every Tuesday and Thursday. 8 months clarified everything, making Caleb's question in the car the most unjust thing I had ever heard. The proceedings progressed gradually, as these matters often do. Paperwork replies, more paperwork. Months slipped by without a definitive moment to mark. The mediation took place in February. We were in separate rooms in a downtown office building while our attorneys shuttled between us. I didn't meet her until the end, in the hallway near the elevator, and only briefly. She appeared different, smaller somehow. She wore a coat I recognized, a charcoal gray piece she had purchased a couple of years prior. She looked at me, perhaps to speak, but instead opened and closed her mouth. I gave a single nod in response, mirrored by hers as the elevator doors parted. The conditions were fair. We agreed on the house's ownership split and arranged a custody plan, with Caleb staying with me during weekdays and spending weekends with her, alternating holidays. He accepted the situation better than anticipated. A calm child who ponders things before speaking, he later showed a greater understanding than expected. I signed the final documents on a Thursday afternoon, my lawyer offering a handshake in return. I drove to school and fetched Caleb early, not disclosing the reason. We didn't discuss the paperwork. Instead, we talked about the birdhouse. No mention of the agreement was made regarding his onion rings and chocolate milkshake, consumed without remorse in an unconventional order. He hadn't let it slip his mind. He wished to commence that weekend. However, I had previously proposed on a different property, a smaller house on the east side needing repair but with strong foundations, accompanied by a 2-car garage ideal for renovation work. The offer was accepted 2 days after the final contract signing. In March, I returned to the same jewelry store where I had bought it. The display cases were unchanged, as was the peaceful lighting. The ring was in my coat pocket, which she had mailed to my attorney's office in a small, noteless envelope. I wasn't certain why she returned it. Perhaps she couldn't hold on to it. Maybe it seemed like proof. The jeweler recognized me. Initially, he didn't speak. Instead, he inquired about my needs. I placed the box on the counter and explained that I wanted to sell it back. He scrutinized it, jotted down some notes, and provided a price. Naturally, it was lower than what I paid initially. This is usually the case. I accepted his offer. On my way out, I paused at the door and posed a question that I hadn't intended to ask earlier. Did you ponder if he contemplated the returned rings, if curiosity stirred within him? He eyed me for a span before replying. His words echoed that each artifact carries a narrative. He admitted trying to detach from the tales, as the trinket itself was ignorant. Merely a ring it was. On my commute home, I pondered this thought. A mere ring, adorned with 2 carats, housed in a platinum casing and shaped like a cushion. All those extra hours condensed into a compact entity that rested on a countertop for a fortnight prior to being mailed back in an envelope. The money was banked into the account I'd opened under my own name. Then, I made a stop at the hardware store, purchasing lumber, screws, and a mini can of wood stain. Caleb and I had a birdhouse to construct. By June, I completed the garage and began work on the kitchen. New counters, new fixtures. A wall that was opened between the kitchen and living room to let in more light. Caleb assisted as needed, maintaining items, providing tools, querying about the reason for each sequence. He mirrored my grandfather's inclination, the urge to grasp the interconnections before proceeding to the next element. In April, we erected a birdhouse in the yard. Caleb personally painted it, a dark green exterior with a white roof. It wasn't flawless. One side was slightly lower than the other, but it was sturdy enough. It would endure. My brother dropped by in July. We barbecued in the backyard on a weekend afternoon. He wandered through the house and appraised my transformation of it. He stated that it resembled me. I perceived this as a compliment. I didn't receive contact from her. I hadn't anticipated it. That aspect of my life was confined to a door I had sealed from within. All that remained with me was the photograph commemorating our second anniversary on a bedroom shelf. It represented the last instant, I was certain. I wouldn't feign that never occurred. It did. One August evening, Caleb joined me on the back steps with a silence as we both watched Hector patrolling the fence line. Later, he nodded towards the birdhouse and remarked, "Dad, there seems to be something dwelling inside now." Upon examination, a small bird was indeed residing within the opening. This revelation seemed to validate a predetermined notion for both of us.